Hey, welcome back to the Tony Kinnett cast, now nationally syndicated from the Daily Signal, first on 93 WIBC. Look, whether you're in our audiences in Denver or in Little Rock, all the way up from Milwaukee, swinging over to Pennsylvania, or down to the panhandle even of Florida, according to Axios, there's a lot going on regarding polling. And whether these polls are going to change everything for Kamala's campaign or for Trump's campaign, and whether it's all for naught, well, look, I don't like the running to the bank every time you make a withdrawal to withdraw all the money and call it quits. For a little bit of the more eased back, relaxed approach at understanding this stuff. And when it comes to getting that kind of cool, calm, collected, measured approach, we go to Saurabh Sharma, the man, the myth, the legend behind American Moment, changing America from the ground up from the excellent guys and gals that he's training over there. Saurabh, thanks for joining us, man.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Tony.
So the thing that set off this invite that is when I poked producer Lou to see if you were available to come on is something that you had retweeted over from David D. Chapman, political analyst, pointing out that the July voter registration change in Pennsylvania, and I'm looking at these numbers, Republicans had registered 21,000 individuals, and Democrats had registered not quite 6,000, so 5,788. We don't hear a lot about voter registration number changes when we're looking at this side of the election. It's all down to the polling. First of all, do you know why we spend more time looking at polling on the meander? It seems like registration would be, I don't know, maybe a more reliable metric to base campaign strategy on.
It's certainly a huge part of it. Look, the polling is the sexy news item that gets you a lot of clicks this time
Right.
of year. People also use polling as a way to push certain narratives about how the election is going. Push polls are used all the time to help candidates raise money. And so, look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We are in unprecedented territory right now. The Harris-Walz ticket is completely undefined nationally and is enjoying a honeymoon period that comes from people just being glad that they don't have the senile, doddering old weekend at Bernie's guy running at the top of the ticket. So President Trump's polling is not looking as excellent as it was a few months ago. I think that polling would have narrowed significantly by this stage anyway. A lot of Democrats would have come home to Joe Biden. We're a very partisanly divided country.
Mhm.
But it's always important to realize that we don't have a national election. There is no national popular vote that will determine who wins the presidency. We have 50 elections in 50 different states. And really, we have 6 elections that actually matter. What are those 6? Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Georgia, Nevada. That's where this election will be decided. And what the Trump campaign has been doing all the meanwhile that is going to be permanent in helping it win is the voter registration work that they've been doing and that other outside groups have been doing. And you can go over to James Blair, who's the political director of the campaign, of the Trump campaign's Twitter, and see some really fantastic numbers on this. But just to rattle a few of them off, in Pennsylvania in 2020, at the end there, Democrats had over 685,000 more registered voters than Republicans. That number has been cut in half as of today. At the end of 2020 in Arizona, the GOP had 130,000 more registered Republicans than there were registered Democrats. Today, that's 259,000, so almost doubling. At the end of 2020 in Nevada, the GOP trailed by 86,000 registrations. Today, that gap is down to 26,000. The margin of victory for the Biden campaign in 2020 was significantly less than the margin of voter registration that Republicans have made up since then. So this election is trending in the right direction when it comes to the fundamentals. At the end of the day, polling can show whatever you want. The question is, how many voters can you turn out on election day? Actual likely voters, people who are registered to vote and are able to do so. And right now, I think that the Trump campaign is doing a very good job on that. Certainly a much better job than the peanut gallery critics that are, having their hair catch on fire because this polling bump would lead you to believe.
And that's one of the things that I've been focusing on lately is that, I'm from the Midwest. So when it comes to our college sports, when it comes to our food, when it comes to our transportation, it's all about the fundamentals, baby.
Yeah.
And so when you're looking at a political ground game, that being the fundamental of getting people registered and getting them out to the vote. I mean, I hate to pull a Charles Barkley obvious. It all comes down to turnout kind of analysis here, but it's how you engage the effort to turn out that is going to define a campaign. And it seems like the Harris-Walz campaign is going all in on the youths and going all in on the social media blitz to get every Gen Z and very, very late stage millennial out to the voting booth right now today. And I haven't really heard about the efforts being spent in Pennsylvania, in Georgia, in Arizona. Who is the Trump campaign? Who is the RNC targeting, at least from anything that you've seen or heard? Who are we going after in trying to ramp up voter registration? I mean, I see a big tent coalition when he gets out in front of the rally. Does that also carry over into the registration bid?
Absolutely. Look, again, it's different in each of these states. In Georgia, uh, we're definitely starting to see a breakaway where Black men in particular are voting for much lower numbers for Democrats than they have been historically. That's going to be relevant there. In Arizona, this big shift that we've seen with Hispanic voters over the last 5 or 6 years is really going to be highly relevant in whether we can win that election. Same thing in Nevada. In the Midwest, it's all about the white working class votes. It's a different strategy in each of those states. And it's always going to be a hybrid of those different constituencies that we're pulling from. You can't index exclusively on one constituency over the other, but there is an absolute advantage that Republicans have right now that is growing because of these voter registration numbers. And we have a bunch of groups out there, whether it's Turning Point Action, the campaign itself, a bunch of other C4s and super PACs that are doing a lot of hard work preparing ballot harvesters that are actually going to make sure that those votes make it into ballot boxes. Look, I think the youth vote is real. Democrats have an advantage with it, but these are not exactly high propensity voters. We're talking about the same generation of people that are terrified to meet their DoorDash driver at their door and insist that he leave the package behind so that they don't have to interact with another human being. These people are not going to turn out at the level that older voters do when it actually comes time to vote. They'll post a lot of brat memes and a lot of TikToks, but they're not actually going to be high propensity voters. That's just a reality of American politics. Young voters do not vote all that much. And so it can be demoralizing to see how unified the Democratic Party is in all this energy. But we have to remember that these elections are always competitive. They're always razor thin. The bump that President Trump had a few months ago was always going to evaporate. And so it's going to be a tight election. It's a coin toss. But the campaign and all of these affiliated groups are in a really strong place to make sure that we have a fighting chance at making sure 2020 doesn't happen again. And that we put back together that 2016 coalition plus some new interesting constituencies and actually get a win here.
Be straight with me. We've been friends for a while. Is it bad that I am not terribly upset that this is close? Because I remember in 2016, a large reason that Hillary lost is because her voters got complacent. You can make an argument that in some places in the country in 2020, there was a little bit of complacency on the right. And I was worried a little bit, just to be frank, that seeing Trump lead Biden in the polls so significantly might engender a little bit of complacency. We talked about this a bit at the RNC. Is it bad that I'm kind of happy to see, a kind of tooth and nail fight because that might rally Republicans to actually follow through and head to the polls instead of trusting somebody else will do it?
Absolutely. Look, I think the campaign's mindset would have been the same regardless. There's a bunch of real competent killers on the Trump campaign that would have treated this like this was a close election, even if we had a 10-day polling advantage going into election day. But I do think it matters for the electorate. On any given day when you can go submit a ballot, most Republicans are normal people with jobs and families. And, oh no, have to take the kid to daycare, have to take them to football practice, whatever. There's all sorts of reasons not to vote. And people don't often feel like that their vote is going to be dispositive for determining an election. Having a close election is the best way to ameliorate that. People will realize that this election's close, their vote matters, and especially in those 6 states that are highly relevant to the outcome of this election, hopefully it'll give people the kick in the butt that they need to actually go out to vote. And so, yeah, I would much rather have these next 100 days have people more on their toes, a little bit more vigilant and prepared to actually turn out and vote and bring their friends rather than walking into it thinking we had it in the bag like Hillary did in 2016 and then getting a rude surprise at 2 a.m. that night.
Cool, calm, incisive analysis. That's the kind of stuff that we expect and see consistently from Saurabh Sharma. If you're not listening to Moment of Truth over at American Moment, you're missing out. I'm just going to level with you. That is something that is definitely worth checking out because you get that all the time. Saurabh, thank you so much for joining us and giving us a little bit of perspective that isn't, people sounding network TV alarm bells over polls every 3 minutes.
It's my pleasure, buddy. Thank you.